Socially responsible media is crucial in maintaining the democracy in a country. So let us get into the discussion of defining what exactly is socially responsible media. Defining social responsibility in media traces back to a report produced by the Commission on the Freedom of Press, usually referred as the Hutchinson's Commission. The project was requested in 1942 by the founder of the Times magazine, Henry Luce, at a time when it was believed that First Amendment freedoms were being increasingly threatened by the rise of totalitarian regimes throughout the world. It was led by the then president of the University of Chicago, Robert Hutchins. This commission deliberated for 4 years and 5 guidelines for socially responsible press in a report titled A Free and Responsible Press was formed. The guidelines suggested that the media has to be truthful, comprehensive, and it has to create space for comment and criticism, and it has to be a representative picture of the constituent groups in a society. It has to clarify the presentation and clarification of the goals and values of the society, etc. Although valid, these principles are criticized for lacking precision and in general are not considered to have had substantial impact on the media industry's development in subsequent years. The social responsibility theory, postulated in 1956, is the first formal theory of social responsibility of the press, and it was developed by Siebert, Peterson and Scram about a decade later in 1956. Social responsibility was presented as a third theory in the book Four Theories of the Press, including authoritarian, libertarian, and Soviet theories. The important characteristics of this theory is the emphasis of the media's responsibility to use its powerful position to ensure proper delivery of information to audiences, and if the media fails in carrying out this responsibility, it may be relevant to have a regulatory body to enforce it. The power and near monopoly positions of the media impose on them an obligation to be socially responsible. Media as a public sphere should not aim at uniformization. It should stimulate processes of individuation and aim at the recognition of diversification. The public sphere should above all try to create and stir up critical discussion instead of controlling it. One of the examples of social responsibility in the media is health news reporting. A study found that journalists' failures to be accurate and stopping follow-up stories on important health issues has negative consequences on the patients. The accuracy of health news reporting depends on the reporter's responsibility to take special care in confirming the veracity of the information. The problem that we find in reporting nowadays is that increasing competition has led the media to work only for public attention and rating points, and are negligent about the impacts that are created by the information they provide. What is media self-regulation? According to the Media Self-Regulation Guidebook published by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, self-regulation is not self-censorship. It is about establishing minimum principles on ethics, accuracy, personal rights, and so on, while fully preserving editorial freedom on what to report and what opinions to express. Self-regulations helps the media to respond to legitimate complaints and correct mistakes. Self-regulation is a pledge by quality-conscious media professionals to maintain dialogue with the public. A complaint mechanism is set up to deal with justified concerns in a rational and autonomous way. In the media, obviously only those outlets whose journalists, editors and owners seek to produce a responsible press would engage in this dialogue. Self-regulation can be set up both industry-wide and in-house. By promoting standards, self-regulations help maintain the media's credibility with the public. Media self-regulation helps convince the public that the free media are not irresponsible. At the same time, self-regulation protects the right of journalists to be independent and to be judged for professional mistakes not by those in power. Democracy is about a shared culture of disputing in a rational and fair manner. Elected governments are participants in the political contest and therefore are not best suited to enforce rationality and fairness. Democracy is incompatible with state custody of the press. Media self-regulation is an effort to impose democracy's political culture independent of political forces. Self-regulation advances the transition from a government-owned, state-controlled press to one owned and controlled by the civil society. What are the advantages of media self-regulation? It preserves editorial freedom, it helps to minimize the state interference, and it promotes media quality. It is an evidence of media accountability. It helps readers access the media in case of queries and complaints. Social responsibility of media is very crucial for the media to function as the fourth pillar of democracy. So, under discussion of social responsibility of media, we have to first understand why media self-regulation is necessary. Media self-regulation is necessary as the independent media organizations and journalists should accept their share of responsibility for the quality of public discourse while fully preserving their editorial autonomy in shaping the public discourse. Are media laws necessary? Yes, to a certain extent, but the press can carry out its crucial role as a watchdog of the government only if there is limited control of the state on them. Constitutions should limit censorship and protect freedom of expression. In order to maintain fearless debate of public issues, only very few types of speech offences should be criminalized. These include words or images that would clearly and imminently endanger the rule of law, society's peace, or the safety of individuals, for example, incitement to violence, calls for discrimination, or distribution of child pornography. Benefits of Code of Ethics. Good journalism is in the interests of the public. It offers news that is accurate, fair, and balanced, gives voice to the voiceless, and contains the diversity of views that a specific story requires. Media has the freedom to be opinionated, but it must clearly distinguish between facts, comments, and opinions. All journalists should pay conscious attention to the Code of Ethics. Code of Ethics is beneficial to everyone, from media owners and publishers. A code is protection against criticism and legal action. For journalists, it serves as a standard against which their work can be judged. For the public, it guarantees that the information they receive is fair, accurate, and verified. Different countries follow different codes of ethics. Why? Firstly, traditions of journalism differ from one country to another. Secondly, some countries act or react more slowly than others to develop and amend their guidelines. Thirdly, and most importantly, there are different sensitivities within every society based on the nature of democracy and on the socio-cultural, ethnic, religious code of conduct. These sensitivities are often reflected in the news content. Newspapers, radio stations, television channels, and internet sites are diverse in itself. So every news outlet can develop its own code of ethics according to its needs. We need not necessarily have an unified code for everyone. It may be appropriate to have one common code or one for the print and one for broadcast. A common code widely approved nationwide may serve as the main source for various types of individual codes. What are the ethical guidelines while reporting terrorism? Acts of terror should be reported accurately and responsibly. Special care must be taken with the wording which should avoid praise of violent acts and eliminate terms that contain emotional or value judgments. The term terrorism is interpreted in various and sometimes opposite ways. As the BBC lucidly puts it, the word terrorist itself can be a barrier rather than an aid to understanding. journalists should try to avoid the term without attribution. They should let other people characterize while they report the facts. Detailed descriptions of what happened, avoiding terms such as freedom warriors or terrorists, raise credibility among the audience. The journalist's goal remains the same as in reporting any story, to let readers make their own judgments. Ethical guidelines in multicultural societies. Codes of ethics should include guidelines related to minority issues. For example, the UK Press Complaints Commission's Editorial Code of Practice contains a special anti-discrimination clause, according to which the press must avoid prejudicial or pejorative reference to any individual's race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or to any physical or mental illness of disability. This means, for instance, that a journalist reporting a crime should not mention the racial or ethnic origins of a suspect except when the police have provided a description of a particular wanted individual. This principle is widely adhered to in the UK, and the Press Complaints Commission has severely criticized newspapers that breached the code when publishing vicious attacks on immigrants. Let us see what BBC's ethics guidelines are. The news has to be accurate, it has to be impartial, and there should be fairness, and the contributors' consent should be there for every news. Privacy should be maintained and public interest should be the prime concern. Crime and antisocial behavior has to be reported with responsibility. The news should not harm or offend anyone. When children are involved, the reporters need to take extra care. Politics and public policies should be carefully followed in every reportage. War, terror, and emergencies should be reported carefully. Religious sentiments should not be offended. Editorial integrity and independence should be maintained. And external relationships should not be affected by any kind of report that is published. While interacting with the audience, care has to be taken. The report should always see to that law is followed, and also there should be accountability for every information that is published. Why should codes be revised? Societies change constantly. This affects the way news is collected, evaluated, and disseminated. New dilemmas, research, and considerations influence the way journalists work. So, codes should be changed and amended as and when required. In this digital age, the media has converged and the media regulations have changed too. Different technology platforms such as satellite, terrestrial, and cable merge on the internet. At the same time, formerly different media formats like radio, TV, and newspapers converge to multimedia content. The senders and producers of content have also changed. A few years ago, only professional journalists were able to publish information, and today everybody can create content and distribute it at a very low cost to a global audience. It has a huge impact on regulations. Technology was complicated and expensive, as bandwidth and frequencies required to disseminate information were scarce resources. In this digital age, there is no scarcity of frequency on the internet. Though the impact of mainstream broadcasters cannot be compared to the impacts of the individual content providers, the impact created is significant. In 2006, the Time magazine chose you as the Person of the Year. The cover of the magazine featured an iMac computer monitor with a reflective mylar pane appearing as the window of an online video player, intended to reflect the image of whoever picks up the magazine as online content. This "you" referred to the millions of people who contribute to the user-generated content of Wikipedia, YouTube, MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, and the multitudes of other websites featuring user contributions. Today, everybody can produce their own media content and distribute it on the internet without significant financial investment or technical skills. This does not make user-generated content professional journalism, but the basic human right to freedom of expression is not reserved only for editorial offices or traditional media outlets alone. It is important to remember that the right to freedom of expression also applies to individual users and citizens online as well as offline. So, who is regulating user-generated content? The decreasing level of state control and government regulation in the media sector should be welcomed, as it removes entry barriers and allows more people to express themselves freely. On the other hand, this development requires more from the individual user when it comes to self-regulation as well as professional and personal considerations on media ethics. To ensure pluralism in the digital age, these concepts, together with the robust enforcement of human rights to freedom of expression, are crucial to understand and address unwanted or offensive content more effectively. What are the efforts taken at the international level? It was decided in the UN World Summit on Information Society that the concept of internet governance extends beyond the purely technical realm. It was decided that national governments play an important role in internet regulation. With their executive power and as legislators, they shape the conditions for the use of internet and can rule out content such as child pornography or inciting hatred. Opting for self-regulation anchored in libertarian press theory with a solid grounding in ideas of John Stuart Mill, the argument against regulation follows free market principles. People who support this view believe that media is a free marketplace of ideas. Self-regulation is effective depending on the individual journalist or media organization's conscience to be socially responsible. So we have come to the end of this session on social responsibility of media. So far, we have discussed the importance of communication, freedom of speech and expression. We have also seen the self-regulation practices in media and the importance of self-regulation practices to maintain autonomy and also to maintain democracy of a country. We have also discussed the necessity of self-regulation practices. We have discussed the International Code of Ethics followed by different media organizations all around the world. We have also discussed the importance of self-regulation practices and other media regulations followed in this digital age where we have lots of user-generated content. Hope this lecture was useful to you. Thank you and let us meet in the next lecture.